A man is sitting in a police interview room, calm, cooperative, answering every question. He has no idea that the investigators across from him already know he's lying. And instead of staying quiet, he's about to hand them the one thing they need to put him away for the rest of his life. On the morning of August 13th, 2018, a woman named Nicole Atkinson pulls up to her friend Shanann's house in Frederick, Colorado, because Shanann isn't answering her phone. Nicole knows something is wrong. She calls the police. Officers let themselves in and find the house empty. Shanann's phone is on the counter, her keys, her purse, all still there. Her two daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, are gone. Shanann herself is 15 weeks pregnant. A few hours later, her husband Chris comes home from work. He tells the police and the local news that he has no idea where his family is. He agrees to sit down with investigators that same day, and from the jump, something is off. He's too calm. Not calm the way someone is when they're in shock. Calm the way someone is when they've already decided what they're going to say. He talks a lot, gives this long account about how he and Shanann had been having problems, that he'd left for work at 5 in the morning, and everything was fine when he left. When investigators push, he doesn't flinch. He just keeps talking. Then he does a local news interview and begs for his family to come home. People watching that clip in real time can feel something is wrong, even if they can't explain what. He doesn't cry. His eyes stay dry the whole time. He looks at the camera and says he just wants his family back, and it lands completely flat. Behind the scenes, investigators already know he's been having an affair. They know the timeline doesn't hold up. What they need is a way to get him to slip up, and they get creative about how they do it. CBI agent Tammy Lee and FBI agent Graham Coder bring Chris back in. During the interview, they try something deliberate. They subtly suggest that maybe Shanann had done something to the girls before she disappeared. They float the idea, let it sit, and then they leave the room. Chris asks to speak with his father. His dad, Ronnie, has just flown in from out of state, and letting him into that interrogation room is a genuine risk. Ronnie could walk in, take one look at the situation, and tell his son to stop talking and get a lawyer. The whole thing falls apart. But investigators decide to allow it, partly because Chris isn't under arrest and could walk out at any time anyway, and partly because they think the emotional weight of talking to his dad might be the thing that breaks him open. They're right. Sitting across from his father, Chris starts talking. He tells Ronnie that Shanann strangled the girls. They were blue, he says. His dad asks him, "She choked both of them?" And Chris says yes, and that when he found out what she'd done, he lost control and killed her. It's completely false. Investigators know it's false, but it's the first time Chris has admitted to killing his wife at all. And that's the crack they needed. They come back into the room and use his own words to keep him talking. He eventually tells them where he left the bodies. Shanann and the girls are found at an oil field where Chris worked. The girls are put into a tank. Chris pleads guilty and gets 5 consecutive life sentences. But the full story doesn't come out until 6 months later, when investigators visit him in prison, and he finally tells them what actually happened. He killed all 3 of them himself. Shanann never touched the girls, and when he drove out to the oil field with Shanann's body in the back of the truck, Bella and Celeste were alive in the car with him. That detail had never even been considered. It changes everything about how people understand what he did. The lie investigators had basically handed to him, the one he grabbed onto because it made him look slightly less guilty, is what unraveled the whole thing. He thought he was buying himself a way out. Instead, he handed them a confession. Jodi Arias didn't make that kind of mistake. Hers was different. Hers was worse. Travis Alexander was 30 years old and lived in Mesa, Arizona. He was a salesman and motivational speaker, and he had an on and off relationship with Jodi Arias that had been messy for years. On June 4th, 2008, his friends find him dead in his bathroom. He's been stabbed 27 times, had his throat cut, and been shot in the head. Even detectives who have worked homicides for years are shaken by how brutal it is. About a month later, Jodi is arrested in California. She sits down with Detective Esteban Flores, and she is completely, almost eerily, relaxed. She leans back in her chair with her hands behind her head and tells him she wasn't even in Arizona when it happened. She's got an explanation for everything. When Flores tells her that her palm print in blood was found at the scene, she says she once cut herself washing Travis's dog in that bathroom, and it must be from that. When he says there's no way anyone else could have left that specific print, she just keeps denying it. At one point, she tells him that if she'd killed Travis, she would beg for the death penalty. She also says, in the same conversation, that she doesn't think she could stab someone, that she'd have to shoot them instead. Travis Alexander had been stabbed 27 times. Then, Flores leaves the room. And this is the part that people still talk about. Left alone, on camera, Jodi gets up and does a headstand against the wall. Then she sings to herself. Then she goes through the trash can. When Flores comes back and tells her she's about to be booked into jail, she asks if she can clean herself up a bit. He says no. Her story changes multiple times over the following years. First, she wasn't there at all. Then 2 intruders broke in, and she watched it happen. Then she did kill him, but only because he was about to kill her. Every version is on camera, and every version directly contradicts the one before it. At her own trial, she even admits on the stand, when the prosecutor points out all the different stories, "I think I was inconsistent in my lies." The jury convicts her of first-degree murder in 2013. She's sentenced to life in prison without parole. These were 2 completely different people with 2 completely different approaches, and both of them handed investigators exactly what they needed without being asked twice. Which makes you wonder, if Chris had just stayed quiet, and if Jodi had just kept it together for 5 more minutes, would either of them ever have been caught? Comment your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there.